Hey everyone, welcome back to Pro AV today. This is our second episode in our series on digital signage, but today we're focusing on the unsung heroes of digital signage, and that's the mounts and support systems. And I brought the best person I could possibly think of to chat about that with me today. We've got the Senior Business Development Director from Peerless AV, Megan Zeller on. Megan, thanks so much for coming on the show today. And you've got a wonderful background behind you, which proves my point. Nobody's doing what you guys are doing in the industry right now.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. Peerless AV is an 80-year-old company that got its start making rabbit ear antennas and ancillary audiovisual accessories. So to grow into what we are now, an emerging tech company, a mounting company, a structural company, we have really evolved. I would say in the last 5 years, we have really made headway in the structural world.
Well, talk about that evolution a little bit. Obviously, the technology world is in a constant state of innovation, and some people would even call it chaos. But you guys have done a great job of really kind of being ahead of the curve on a lot of these trends and really giving the industry the support, quite literally, that it needs to pull off a lot of its initiatives. Talk about that evolution just a little bit, and how you've been able to stay so far ahead.
Wow, I want to say 5 years ago. So I started with Peerless 6 years ago. But about 5 years ago is when the shift happened. So from LCD to direct view LED. So from video walls, obviously, the demand began with just having a large screen. Obviously, cute little squares that, go together to make a screen, but you, of course, had lines, bezels, and, they never really lined up perfectly. So we invented a mount that had 8 points of adjustment. Fantastic mount. It's still one of the best selling products we have at Peerless, but we are seeing a decline in that SKU specifically and moving towards the seamless screen, like what you see behind me. It allows you to do something in a 16:9 aspect ratio or any configuration that you desire. So for us, I want to say the shift was about 5 years ago when the cost of direct LED started to go down to a reasonable level. I would say within the next 2 years, it should be, I would say, close to on par with the price of LCD. When you look at, per cabinet cost of mounting, yes, the screens are a little bit smaller if you look at, a 500 millimeter by 1,000 millimeter cabinet. The price is actually less per cabinet than it would be for a video wall mount. It does require a bit more specialty trades. So I would say, specialty installers. So you need someone that's very skilled in, working with the fine pixel pitch LED, as it's a bit more delicate than your typical LCD screen. So it's a specialty product. It's a specialty mounting structure. And the level of forgiveness is pretty low. I think anything that's more than a 2 millimeter gap, you can actually see a line in. So you have to be extremely precise.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point that I think you guys do a great job of mixing the precision with the flexibility, right? Gone are the days where the standard 16:9 LCD TV was adequate, right? Now you have wayfinding applications, you have modular LED wall applications, and you guys have done a great job staying really ahead of that curve as well. Talk about some of the ways that you've seen, specifically on the integrator side and on the designer side, some of the ways that some of those non-traditional applications have helped form some of the ways that you guys are building your mounts and you guys are doing some of that R&D.
Yeah, I would say initially when we got our start, we were just building mounts for the wall, just as we have historically done for televisions. So the initial start was just in basic wall mounts. I think the largest we were doing was like a 10x10 when we first got our feet wet with this. But as demand increased, we had to increase the size. We had to increase the knowledge of our engineers. So we certainly hired some amazing talent, people that had worked all over the world on incredible projects. So I guess back in the days of the Jumbotron is where they got their start. So, they were used to working with large structures. And so from there, our, 10x10 mounts grew into things that are gigantic. So we did a massive project overseas. I can't even tell you the dimensions. It's so large, and it was in meters. So my mind does not work in metrics. So it was huge. The wall behind me was a couple 100 feet long. So, I mean, they're massive sizes. And, as you get into something where there's, something that's longer than you can see, in one single view, you have to worry about a lot of structural things. And, integrators today, there are some that are very well versed in this and some that are just now getting into the space. So it's been interesting with some have the knowledge and, want to talk structures, and other ones think it's just a flat wall mount that goes on the wall. So it's interesting in the evolution of this and the education. That's part of this as well. So I can tell you some of the structures we're manufacturing right now are 20,000 pounds, 30,000 pounds. We have one that we're manufacturing right now, should be a July install. It's about 50,000 pounds just for the structure, plus the LEDs. So, I mean, we are talking, a huge amount of weight, a huge amount of steel. And with that, there's so many considerations that go into it. So deflection, obviously, snow load, you want adjustment as well in your mount. So there's a lot of configurations and things that have to be thought of. And, we're building something of that size in pieces, as large as we can send, and then working with the integrators and usually a general contractor and occasionally steel workers as well to get it done.
Megan, you mentioned some of the discrepancy in integrator knowledge. I assume that the buying process looks a little bit different too from integrator to integrator, where maybe, the mounting is thought of very early along in the process versus maybe an afterthought, depending on what use case is. Walk me through what a traditional buying process looks like these days as people are evaluating mounting solutions.
Well, it's interesting. It's still an untraditional process. So the only consistent thing is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when you'll be brought in. For example, with a theme park or something, you'll be involved 3 years in advance. So you know exactly what you're doing. With snow, it's a lengthy process for involvement. You're working with all of the contractors, the trades, design and development. So you're understanding what's involved. And then some of the other projects, it's still an afterthought. So, you're brought in at the last minute. It's not a load bearing wall. They need a structure and they need it in 8 weeks' time. So, it's a desperate time crunch to, meet the need. And right now in sports betting, the legislation's changing. So, it's at a rapid rate. So every time I look, there's a new state where legislation has passed. So it's a race, to hit the deadline of the next major sports event. So whether that be Super Bowl, March Madness, the beginning of NFL season. So you constantly are, rushing to hit these deadlines. And I can tell you, someone that had rear projection in a sports book is now clamoring, trying to get something ready for something with direct LED. So there's a lot involved, at least the casinos we work with involve the right structural engineers, the right architects, the right team of people, but everyone's moving at warp speed. So it's it's a mad dash to get it finished.
Well, you brought up one of the challenges. I think that's one of the most interesting, and it's this idea of retrofitting LED walls in previous projection environments or a number of different displays. And you see that not only in sports books, but you see that on cruise ships. You see that in a lot of different other places. What are some of the considerations that you have to think about on a retrofit, maybe versus an install, like you mentioned at a theme park, where you've got 3 to 4 years of lead time?
Right. And we work very closely with the cruise industry. I can tell you, I was just in Miami yesterday, meeting with cruise lines, discussing direct LED projects. So it is something where there's a constant conversation. For them, timing is changing based on what's going on. So, they still don't really know their dry dock schedules. So they assume it's, in 90 days and it's going to be at one location, and that location may change based on, another ship getting delayed or something else happening. So it's really interesting with them. It's usually a short timeline, as short as possible for them. And it's usually involving a lot of frantic calls and air freighting something somewhere, just trying to meet a ship wherever that is. So typically we'll ship to, the closest port, and then someone will pick up from there and air freight wherever it needs to go. But with that one, replacing your projection, obviously in the marine industry, on the outdoor side, you have a lot of things to worry about as far as corrosion. So thankfully, our engineers have studied this for a number of years. We've done a lot of work in the marine industry and also, just in aquatic centers that are, caustic environments. So you've got chemicals, you have all these things because they're cleaning the decks with hydrochloric acid. So you have a consideration with that as well for the exterior pieces. So a lot to worry about. And the interior, also with a cruise ship, you want something to be as light as possible. So weight is important. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, as far as finding something that works structurally, as well as being as lightweight as possible. So yeah, it's a different set of design parameters versus dealing with something that's seismic out in, California, Nevada, something like that. So yeah, it's different in every location. And, looking at, we typically spend our time indoors. We'll do specialty outdoor projects if it's something where it makes sense, something where, aquatic centers, for example, we know that so well. It's a specialty product where if it's someone just hanging a sign on the outside of a building, that's not us. We're specialty, and no one wants to pay, the price of steel where someone else could provide something that was aluminum and probably half the price and half the weight. So we stay, in our lane and just deal with our specialty markets and specialty products.
Hey, and that goes hand in hand with what we say all the time on this show is find an integrator that works locally or that works in that environment, because the worst case scenario would be somebody decides to try and cheap out because their integrator recommended something else that's just going to corrode in 2 years. So I know we see eye to eye on that, but a great reminder to our audience, stick with those localized integrators. But, as you guys are looking to expand, you mentioned really rolling out this new side of Peerless in the last 5 or 6 years. As you guys are looking to expand, what do you see next on the horizon, right? Is it more architectural and structural integration where you guys are actually looking to be built inside of buildings or in structures? Really, what does that look like for you guys?
So it's pretty interesting. If you had asked me 9 months ago, I probably would have given you a completely different answer than today. I can tell you the bulk of my days consist of calls that are structural calls, talking about different mounting structures, that what we can do for buildings that can't support it. So things that are, multi-levels high, dealing with something that's just a very unique application that a standard wall mount won't work for. Also, people who have to install it, take it down. I mean, portable doesn't mean you can just roll it around and have it look good. I mean, for us, it's still something that would be a static thing. We would always prefer tiebacks to the wall or to the ceiling, just to, structurally support it and make sure everything's fine. But we always go through the tip test, and all of that was something that would be floor standing as well. So just the engineering behind the whole process is pretty wild. But my day-to-day consists of structural phone calls, where I could say 9 months ago, I would have been talking about, a lot more wall mounts, a lot of, just more basic applications, where all of a sudden we've made a name for ourselves in the industry and everything is really turned into a structural conversation. So we've done some museums. I want to say a few all over the country at this point, a handful in Georgia, recently one in Oklahoma as well. And then we're also doing control centers for jet companies. We're doing, like I mentioned, the sports books. I mean, so many sports books and all over the country. So that's one we're very proud to be a part of. That's amazing as legislation's changing and evolving. So you're seeing these sports betting facilities also be a part of ballparks and, basketball venues and all of these places that we never thought we would see sports betting. So it's incredible to be on the forefront of that and be a part of history.
Well, Megan, like I said earlier, you guys really are the unsung heroes of the industry. The structural development really allows the AV industry to have the innovation that it needs. And I will not recommend Peerless highly enough. There's not a way that I could recommend you guys higher, because I've had firsthand experience really with the great work that you guys do, not only from the product side, but really from the community engagement side and really the follow-up and customer service side. So everybody that needs a mount, I always recommend they go to you guys first and talk with their integrators. But Megan, thanks so much for hopping on today and continuing our series on digital signage.
Thank you.